Day that the Lord has made, we rejoice and be glad in it. Please take some time to share with your, I don't know who you're going to share with, but take some time to share this program. We're on the air, men versus women. I believe it's a little unfair. These are our two shows, the Conversations and Inside with Victory with Man Up. But I think that the men can handle this. Um, Welcome all y'all to this incredible show. Now, I heard the last time the women believed that they won. Is that true?
That's what they believe, but they were wrong.
They were wrong. So we're gonna find out. We're gonna break the deal today. Now, everybody, why don't y'all smile? Everybody look mean. I am your host, Pastor Tony Smith. I'm your host. Let's get right into it. Let's talk about it because it's real. Let's get on the subject that's going to happen to all of us, and that's the area of grief. And the question is, does men handle grief better than women, or do women handle grief better than men? Anyone that has a microphone can start.
I think it just depends on who the person is that they lose. Because if a man loses their mother, I can see them really having a hard time dealing with that. And for a woman, if we lose a child, we have a really hard time dealing with that. So it just depends on, to me, who they lose.
Okay, well, we ain't had no battle. She just messed everything up.
I think that it depends on what you're looking at, because I think that a man is not going to be as emotional during the process. So his grieving time might seem shorter because he won't spend as much time being emotional as a woman would.
In my opinion, women grieve. Their process is better because we're more emotional, we get it out. And men, they hold things in for the most part because at a young age, a lot of them are taught, don't cry, get it together, it's not that serious. So they might keep it bottled up and then one day it just explodes. So I think we get it out quicker.
I actually was going to say the exact same thing. I think women get it out the way as soon as it happens. You get all the emotions, all the crying, all the different mood swings or whatever you may go through. But men tend to hold it in. Speaking personally, I lost my grandmother 2 years ago, and I didn't have a ton of emotions when it happened. But more recently, I've been feeling it because I held it in and was trying to stay strong for my mother and my sisters and like that. And then recently, it's kind of playing back in my mind and kind of feeling more emotional about it.
So do you think that so your point was that grief, it all depends on who they lose. But let's deal within the area that if they lost someone, who takes the most time to get over the grief? Who maintains the most time? Pastor Poole?
I'm thinking that it has a lot to do with the individual person. That's why we have to be careful about over generalizing things, because we are different people. We have different things that are part of our background of experience. So that if a person has been in a family where the family is very, very unrestrained in terms of how they express their feelings and whatnot, as opposed to a family where people are a little bit more introverted in terms of saying what really is going on in their lives, then they may have there's a difference that you can see that can happen. And also, I think it also has to do with, in terms of males, because as it has been said, men, because of their upbringing, may have been taught that, real men don't cry. So they tell that to the young boys, and they tell them suck up and, just take it and let's keep it moving. Whereas we may say to our girls, we'll hug them to us and say, oh, it's going to be all right, baby, and don't worry and whatever. So it has to do real with who has been sowing what into them to help them to understand how they can receive relief in dealing and handling stress, emotional things that happen in their lives. So it has a lot to do with who's been speaking into them earlier on.
I'm going to throw it to the men, this question. Are women more emotional when it comes to grieving?
I think so, because women are emotional creatures. they caring. So I do believe that they take longer to deal with the process of death, whether it's child, mother, and men on the yeah, we was taught to be tough and stuff. When I lost my dad, I cried. I mean, I got it out and stuff, but I think that's a period of the time when a lot of men, I believe, will hold the house down more because how we deal with stuff. Let's say we get it out and cry, while the women are still going through their emotion, because women put death to a date, a birthday. You know what I'm saying? They keep it going and remind themselves of it every year and stuff like that, where a man will deal with it. And I know with me, I don't even want to be reminded of the death. I like to be, you know, like it does something to you. Like it hits me every now and again. But I can't allow that to stop me from working, dealing with the kids. It's like some things when men get down about work or something, where they go through their moment, and the woman get to picking up the pieces and keeping the house going. But I think that's the time where the men really, because how we deal with grief and stuff, we don't stay in it long. Whether, and that's with kid, mom, or anything. Because the more you love them, the harder it is, and we quicker to be like, you know, not deal with it every day, all day.
So if women are more emotional, what makes that happen? That the woman becomes more emotional than men in grief?
I believe what makes the woman become more emotional in some cases is that, you know, with women as young girls, we are brought up to show how we feel or to tell how we feel. And a lot of times, as it has been said, you know, the boys are like, man, suck it up, you know, man up. But what I was going to say in regards to what we were saying briefly before, I think it's because of how it depends on the foundation. Like, for example, if the man or the woman is brought up in church, you know, that foundation is given where you're looking at grief and death differently. You're looking at it, and many times as a homegoing, you're celebrating the life of that individual that's passed away. So many, like myself, was taught not to look at it as a sad time, but to praise and honor the good things about the person in their life that they live. So you kind of don't get into that where you are weeping or feeling any means of sorrow in regards to the loss of the life, but you're celebrating the life.
Yeah, but the connection to people brings emotion, and it doesn't mean that you don't believe that they are going to heaven, but this separation draws pain. So I guess my question is, by your question is this: when the scripture says we don't sorrow as others sorrow, this is a good point that we met that today. What do that mean, Stefan? What do that mean that we don't sorrow like others sorrow, but we are sorrowful?
Are sorrowful when we lose someone, but I believe the scripture is referring to how you going to handle the sorrow, how you going to allow the sorrow to affect your belief in God, your faith, other areas in your life. Versus some people, death stoops them, you know, to a place where everything needs to come to a halt because this has happened. But we know that life goes on. Death is promised to all of us at some point in time. And so instead of letting the grief and the sorrow and the mourning consume you, right, it's the Holy Spirit that lives in you and your faith to know who God is, that this isn't the end of the process.
That's good. So to the men, if all that she say is true, then my question to you will be, so how do you get past the grief? Or do you get past it?
It depends on the person. Prime example today, you brought up the passing of Pastor Eddie. And whenever I think about his name, it always gives me sorrow and grief because he imparted so much into me. Now, as opposed to someone else in my family that may have died, and you may bring up his name, I don't get the same grief as I do because of the stuff that the one person imparted in you than the other.
So it's basically a person's preference on how they handle sorrow, how long it takes. And like I said, it all depends on whether or not that person imparted a whole lot into you or nothing at all.
Yeah, but how can we, and this is to everyone, anyone, how do we get past the grief but maintain the vision?
But for me, what I learned, and I just learned this recently, but we live our life knowing that we're trying to live so we can go be with Christ. So if that's what we're living our life for, when that person passes on, they have accomplished the goal that we're trying to reach. So we got to change how we look at it, as opposed to, yes, we're losing that person, but unfortunately, that's part of life that we have to go through. So we can't change that. So we have to change how we look at death, as opposed to when you think about the things that you'll never get a chance to do with that person, that causes the heartache and the pain. But if you think about all of the times that you had to be able to enjoy that person, it allows you to deal with it differently. And that's just for me. So I just had to learn, we mourn a lot, and until you are educated or you go through that process yourself, it's hard to really understand it.
Yeah, but I'm gonna throw this at you, and I hear what you're saying, but the first approach to grief is heartache, shock, those things, those I don't want to call them, but negative things. How do we get past there?
I think you have to put things in its proper perspective. So there is a time for the heartache. There is a time for the sorrow. I know I had a girlfriend, her parents died, and she would stay at the cemetery. So for me, she was dying with them. And I told her, okay, we know they're not actually in that ground. We know that they're not there, but that allows you the comfortability to go back to that place and be justified in that dark place. So what we're gonna do is, first we're gonna stop going to the cemetery, and we're gonna put your parents' relationship with you in its proper perspective, because they're gone and you still here. Not that it doesn't matter or it's important, like my father died, but I have to put that relationship in perspective. Daddy was here for a moment of time. He served a moment and a purpose in my life. But now that that's over, Saffron still has work to do.
Did it have a lot to do with how they died?
I don't think it has a lot.
Does it
no.
affect, I'm saying,
Well,
does the grieving affect how people die,
It may for some,
but not for you?
but not for me. Well, I've never experienced like a tragic death, so I can't really speak on that.
Okay.
Like a murder or, anything
Or
like
sometimes
that.
it's just
Personally.
timing.
Mhm.
People taking from you in time, unexpectedly. So, John?
I think you don't get past it. You learn to live with it, depending who, you know what I mean? And because there's a lot of formidable ways of dealing with stuff, church and stuff. But when you're talking to people, regular people, and how they deal with it, like you said, it happens all of a sudden. I think it's just like having anger management or something. Some things God don't take away. Some things you learn to deal with and control it. And I think that's one of those things where you learn to, you live with it. You don't get over it. Because whatever it is, child, you loved it. Even if it was a friend, no matter what the role was, it had some kind of effect on you. So I believe you learn to live with it and don't go nowhere.
So what happens, those that are listening to us, if you have any questions concerning grief, this is our first half. We would love to try to imparting you some answers if it's possible. But grief has a way of making people come out of their character and do things to hurt themselves, like drinking, isolation, depression. How do we deal with that as a believer? Now, as a believer, how do we overcome those things? Because those are the things that makes your point valid, that you die with the person. So how do we overcome those things? Pastor Poole?
I'm thinking that a part of the process has to really do with where it is that you've all formerly sought comfort. Because if you are used to going to a certain place or doing a certain thing as a part of relieving whatever it is that stressor is in your life, then that's when the old habits and the old patterns really need to be done away with. Somehow, And I think a part of the help that we need, I think about how in the scripture David said, I look to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord. Because a lot of times, what people do is they'll try everything and everybody, and then the Lord is the last one that they're willing to call on. But the bottom line is, if they understand that God has promised His presence is here, He's all around us. He says that's why He's the one who can say with authority that He'll never leave us nor forsake us. So a part of the problem is that when people don't know the Lord, they don't know really where the source of their help is. So they, now sometimes, unfortunately, when a tragedy occurs, then that can be an awakening process for them, because finally they come to the point where they realize that they're not in control of this. But they realize that their heart is broken and they're distraught, and then they, in their depths of their soul, they cry out, "Oh God, help me." You know, whereas before in pride and other things, they would have been saying, "I need a drink. I need to go and get with somebody else and do whatever I can to make my flesh feel better." But that is not the remedy for what their soul really cries out to. But when they get to a point where they acknowledge that God is there and that He is one who is able to help them, and they believe that He is willing to do that, then that could be a turning point for them.
That's what you want to add?
I think that it's about the individual's perspective about death. I think in many cases we don't have a perspective about death, so when death shows up, it's always a shock. It's always unexpected, even if you watching somebody in an ill state transition, it's still unexpected, because our perspective about death is we don't prepare for death. And if we get a mentality where we understand that everyone has to die, that everyone has an expiration date, and we don't know when anyone's is, understanding that, then you can approach death from a different perspective than it being a shock that causes you to be stuck and causes you to be in a place where, you know, you're in a position where you can't function and you don't know how to do things and you can't move forward as a result of that. But we really have to maintain the fact that everyone is going to have a time that they're going to leave, and we need to be prepared to deal with it. Not saying that it won't hurt, not saying that you won't have a moment that you won't grieve, but it won't be something that is like, how in the world did this happen?
Well, we're going to change up a little bit, and we're going to get on the subject that I think all of us can participate in, and that is in raising children and giving directions to children. Who you think is the strongest figure to direct the child? Not mold them, but more the discipline in the child. Is it the mother or the male or female? Who you think? Now, we know when you have a parent, you have a single family, normally the single family is dominated by the woman, but when there's a role play, who you think it has the strongest role, the male or the female, in directing the child? Who they listen to first, the bottom line?
In my experience, it's been the woman that they listen to first, because they're nurturers, they're there, and sometimes they try to circumvent and because they know moms are softer, and to avoid going to the dad.
Yeah, but if that's the case, then why are you always saying, I'm going to tell your father?
It boils down to the structure of the family and the personalities of the mother and the father. Me and my wife, we have 3 boys. They run roughshod over her as much as they can until I'm around, because they know I'm the disciplinary. But in the beginning, we both had to step back and figure out our role. You know, we were both kind of that disciplinarian and that nurturer until we found out that it wasn't working. So I took on the role as the bad guy, the one that was always making sure they do stuff,
Good cop, bad
punishing.
cop.
Exactly. So it's the parent's personality and whatever role they tend to take up. I'm not saying that my wife cannot be the bad guy. She can be a real good bad guy. But I'm just better suited for it, because I can take all the dirty looks, the attitudes, the huffing and the puffing, as it hurts her heart when she may beat them or punish them and they give her the sad face and she like, oh, those are my babies. Me, you can cry alligator tears all you want. It's not going to move me because that's what I was born to do.
So when you see your husband or the father, do women cringe to see the father discipline their children?
For me, I don't. I think that
She said beat them.
no, because I think kids tend to know that they can try and get over on us because we're a little bit more softer, and especially if you're in a two-parent home, the mother may be a little bit softer than the dad. When you're in a single-family home, the mother has to play both roles so she can come up a little bit more stronger. So for a male, all they have to do is have their presence a lot of times. If they have that dominant personality where they can just show up, and all they got to do is say it once. We have to yell, tell them not to do it. Men are more, to me, if they say not to do something, if you do it, the discipline that they put in place is going to take place. For women, if we tell the kids not to do something, then we'll say, I told you not to do that, and then we'll tell them again.
I'm just asking the questions, but that didn't happen in my house. If my mother says she was going to beat you, you try to find out what time. Like, what time? Is she going to wait till I go to sleep and wake me up and beat me? Or is she going to give me my charge as soon as she get home? Now, my father was different. He said, boy, don't let me have to beat you. Boy, when I get you, I'm going to hurt you. Man, you know, you don't want me to put my hands on you. I mean, I had a dream speech before he does something, you know, and I was the goodest child in the family. I had a good spirit and very loving, but my father did the beating. So is that a generational problem?
Yes, I believe for me, it's how I was raised. My mother is the disciplinary action. She plays disciplinary person. She plays no games. So I am the disciplining person. However, my husband is a man of words. So he says things that will hurt my son's feelings, and then that make me cringe judging him. That make me cringe because I feel like the words is more wounding than if you just beat his butt, because I'll just snatch him and get it over with.
Is that this?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think sometimes, I know as far as our household goes, I'll find that I will discipline. We have 3 boys as well. I'll go to discipline, and then my wife would be like, well, did you have to be that hard on them? In my mind, yes, I did, but she may not think that way. But I noticed that, again, the children, because women are more emotional and care more, they will try to get over, I think, on my wife as far as our household goes, generationally speaking, because she's more emotional. Oh, my babies, oh, this, oh, that. So they could play on that. So if she's having to do something and he's saying, but mommy, then I say, what did your mother say? Then it kind of like ends it.
I think it depends on the gender of the child. Like, in my household, when my sister and I were growing up, my mother was a disciplinarian. Daddy didn't do any hitting. He didn't do any spanking. We were daddy's little girls. I think that makes a difference. Whereas the boys they couldn't get away with murder, you know. But now, as an adult having my own child, it's different because, you know, my daughter is daddy's little girl. So I was the disciplinarian, and he would just talk. He would do the talking, you know. You're not supposed to do that. Let's do better. And I'd be like, look, we didn't raise you that way, so that's something that we're not going to expect. I'm not going to tell you anymore, and that was it. But now, getting older, I truly believe that men and women, when it comes to disciplining children or rearing children, you have to have that conversation. Because now we're in a time where a lot of times spanking's not the answer. It's making them tougher, and they'll buck up in many times. So we not going to have. I'm just talking in general from looking at how society is. Look, we didn't know it growing up. We didn't know that. But looking at being an educator and also
I think
as a parent,
if your child is going to buck you, they already know you can't fight.
Yeah, pretty much. But they think that, we are in a society now where children are listening to their peers, and they think, they can be equals in some cases. So as parents, we have to be on one accord, as setting that tone as parents to say, look, if your mother says something, if your father says something, that's the word. and it's not going to be any exception.
John, go ahead, John. Go ahead, John.
If one of my kids buck, look, if they buck, like they be grieving. We be grieving. Parents be grieving. Somebody gonna die.
Then we
Somebody
go
gonna
back
die. But oh man, that's crazy. Cause wow, that just blew me. But definitely, everybody need to be eating these days. And if it, like Bernie Mac says, you're a punk parent. You're a punk parent. Because if they buck, that means they've already punked you down the line before this even, whatever that issue came up. And I know some women, if you're a single mom, okay, you're doing it by yourself. And but once that child shows you any kind of disrespect, I don't care if you're a single mother or not, you need to discipline your child. Because if you don't, it's killers out here that was never disciplined. It's kids out here robbing people.
You
that
better
was
go ahead,
never
boy.
disciplined. You get what I'm saying? Them ones that has been disciplined, because if you don't, for real, you setting them up to get out here, and these police gonna discipline them. You see what I'm saying? So them women, they always feel like, because it's an old excuse now to say you need the man. You need the man in there. Yes, when we in the house, I could say something to my kids. I beat them. Me and Lynn, we do the bad cop, good cop. I beat them. She cringe. You get what I'm saying? But you get warnings before that. So the beating is justified when it comes.
I would say as far as single parents, it's generational, where my grandmother was a disciplinarian. My mom, she fell for it every time. I would cry as soon as she picked up a shoe. So she never beat me.
So you was a shoe ministry. That's it.
Yeah, extension cord, all that. So
Your mother going to jail next week.
So now, being a grandmother, my grandson plays his mother. He plays her. So he falls out, hit her back, talk back to her, and she'll call me and say, I'm going to call Nanny, and he'll straighten up. And he'll be like, no, not Nanny. So when he's with me, he'll do that feeling as though if she don't do anything, who are you? So, I find myself being the disciplinarian, but he always want to be up underneath of me. So, but however, when Dirk shows up, when we come to church, he line right up. Like he's straightened up like he a soldier.
So is that like I respect these people and I have lesser respect for the other person?
It's the stature of the person, because like in the scenario that she had mentioned earlier, that they listen to their peers and they want to they'll try it and do all that. That's not happening. I don't even care what kind of parenting you have at your house. When you come to my house, you understand the rules.
You understand my house rules.
And I don't care what you do at your house.
That's
you might
right.
run there, but when you come to mine, they
That's
already
right.
know what it
They gonna
is.
do it. That's right.
So it's
I get nervous. Do timeout work?
No.
Well, I guess that's the answer to those questions. I was trying to get some dialogue, but straight out no on both sides.
Because you
Knock
have
out
to
work?
put some type of fear into the children, because if you don't, like she said, the disrespect will go on and on. So the first time you nip it in the bud. But see, where I come from, if I discipline one of my kids, when my mother see them on site, your mama's, you got suspended from school. Now, I didn't already handle it at my house, but she said on site. Now you seeing stars, okay? You know what I'm saying? Now you seeing stars.
Earl, Jermaine,
Oh man. Lost
Put the microphone up.
I know. I'm trying to think. For sure, it's always my job. Like Pastor Marks was saying, when you come to my house, there's a different set of rules. She was talking about Juju. Me and his first conversation wasn't, no, I talked to him like, hey, why are you doing that? Why are you crying? We don't do that here. So he knew straight off the bat I wasn't for all that crying stuff. So when he crying around me and he sees me, he knows, oh, Mr. Derrick not gonna play that. So I'm not gonna be able to turn him around. None of this stuff I'm doing right now is gonna work on him. So why even go through the motions?
so is it respect that your child has for you or fear?
It's fear. It's you. I believe you want them to respect you, but I think you have to put a fear along with that respect, just in case they lose the respect. You still got that fear to know that I will bust you up. Because see, somebody else can make you disrespect me. You know, somebody else can make you disrespect me, and not necessarily in my face, but you acting a fool at school, you disrespected me, because now I'm embarrassed as a parent. So I think you need both. You have to have the combination, and if you don't have it, what happens is, as they get older, you can't get them back. And this
So
is
how
getting
do
them
we
back.
fix, and we don't have a lot of time, but we get into something good. How do we fix structuring our home to have respect, and then have the child go to the school and have disrespect and be protected by the school on how you structure them in their disrespect?
Well, I know I got one that gets in trouble all the time, and that that counselor there, I think if you got somebody at that school that works with the parents and not work against trying to protect them, this lady, she really she be with the program, whatever it takes, to communicating when he gets in trouble, and the parent got to be active and going up there to find out what's going on and what's being said, and that way that kid can't play games between school and home.
But we have a question we're going to do in a few minutes, but the question I'm bringing across is, okay, I know how you run your home, John, and I know you run it in the area of discipline, right? To take that discipline that you have and deal with the issues at the school, but the school is protecting your children because they call I'm not saying you do this, but they say that you're doing some abuse, and then the child develops in such a way where he feels like there's no penalty, so there's no harm, I can do what I want to do.
I think that comes with communication, because it has to be a partnership with the parent and the school. So, for example, like my
That can be a
kids,
partnership with the whole system.
right? But I mean, I'm saying, like, I think that when the school understands the standard that you have, so like I don't have problem children, but I have a high standard for my kids. So I make it known with their teachers, with their administrators, what my standard is. I understand that C is okay in this school, but it's not in my house. So if at any point they're functioning below a B, there's trouble. So I need to know about it as if it's a D. And then when they understand that that's what my standard is, then they adjust and they treat it as that and not try to minimize what I do to the standard of the school. Now, it's not from an aspect of abuse, but it's just getting the partnership in place.
Now, you got a question.
So the question that we have is, what is a healthy balance in a single-parent home, and what is the best way to reach that balance?
What's the healthy, they say,
What is the healthy balance in a single-parent home, and what is the best way to reach it?
well, I'm gonna start out by saying this, since y'all think the healthy balance in a single family home is making clear role plays. Who's in charge, who's on first base, who's on second base, and who's on third base, and not bring everybody at home at home plate and say we all are here working together. No, there's a role play. And I think the problem with parents that are single is that they work so hard pleasing their kid that they forgot there's role plays. That's what I say. But
I agree totally with you, Pastor. And to add to that is to say what you mean and mean what you say. When you're disciplining or giving rules to your kids, don't say this and don't follow through on it with the threatening, or if you don't do this, or if I find out this and you keep doing it, that kid, they smart. They gonna play you. They gonna keep doing it. So as a single parent, because it's only you have to follow through on top of knowing. So if you got two siblings in the house, let's say 21 and 18, they got roles they have to play in that house. If it's helping that 9-year-old with homework, keeping the house clean, they don't do it. 21, get out. 18, you up next.
I think that if you got anybody in your house, I don't care if they're 45, they gotta obey your rules. That's period. So how do we work out the challenge, or when the parent gets on the child's side and whisper against the other parent?
It happens a lot. It happens a lot. You have to sit.
What side it happens a lot on?
From my experience,
Uh-huh.
I've experienced where the dad will whisper to the child to tear the mother down, and all she's trying to do is keep it moving, keep money flowing, and keep growing, you know. So you have to talk to your children and say, well, even if it's the other side, if it's the mother that's talking down about the dad, you have to tell them, look, what goes on in their house is their house. This is our house. Don't bring it to me, you know.
Is that realistic though? Is that realistic? That's a good quote. But when your child comes home from his daddy house, we're talking about the single parent thing, or come home from his mom house, and he gets to say, mommy, daddy is not fair, because that's not even realistic in church. In a community of father or a community where mother and father lives, you know, I've seen, you know, parents say, you know, or talk to children and say, well, my father said don't say nothing to her, you know. So he's not supporting the parent, he's coaching the child. So
keep winning in front of them and don't talk down about the other person, because you're going to continue to hear things, and you can allow it to eat away at you or fuel your fire to keep doing better and just shine in front of them.
I think you have. I think talking to the child is good, but I think you need to talk to the other parent, and like we need to sit down as adults and figure out how we're going to raise these children. We're co-parenting. I know our relationship didn't work out, but we're raising this child to be the best child and grow up to be the best adult they could be. Let's not put our personal issues, you know, on this child and confuse this child, and they grow up and not be exactly what we expected them to be. I think we need to kind of like be a little bit more mature about the situation and establish some standards about how we want to raise the kid.
But that's first y'all have to become mature, the male and the female, and that takes time after a breakup or a bad arrangement, because what happens is with the person that has the child psychologically think they create all the rules, and you obey the rules. If you invest the money, then you don't have any say in how we raise. You just do the investment. Does that make sense, ladies?
I think that's good. I think control in some cases becomes in the midst of it. And once both parents get over that control, it's not your child, it's not the other parent's child, it's our child. And like Matt was saying, you have to be on one accord and co-parent and say, okay, listen, we want the best for the child. You love the child as much as I love the child. And it's not about who's the best mommy or who's the best daddy or who can provide the most, but this is the vision that we have for our child. And how can we come together to meet the best for that child? So like from my experiences, it wasn't always peaches and cream. You know, we had to go over that rocky period, but now we have gotten to a point where now we can co-parent together the best for our child.
Okay, we got a question and a smile.
How do you, as a parent, handle a disrespectful child without laying hands on them? Well, so I think a lot of it starts with...
Without laying hands on them, you got to ask Oprah, because we don't know nothing. At this church, we don't know anything about that. And, we follow the scripture. You spoil the child. But I mean, y'all, it's y'all show. So what you?
Oh, no,
you got
I don't
something
have
to
no
do?
answer for that.
I don't have an answer for that, because my mother used to say, I'm not going to jail for nobody. I'm not going to raise you to go to jail. So I'm gonna do you good here, so you won't have to go.
I think it's crazy when you let a child tie your hands. You can't beat them. You can't punish them. That means you's a punk parent, because for real talk. Because you can't let a kid train you. There's something, all right, you ain't a punk, but you don't want to beat the kid for whatever reason. You soft, you scared, you don't want to hurt, whatever.
Well, you just don't want to be the bad person.
Or you don't want to be the bad person. There's no such thing. There is. You could punish the kid forever and a day. But if that kid going that hard, you know what I'm saying, you have to bring fear. I totally agree with Evangelist said. You got to bring some kind of fear, because if that kid is showing
or
it
some
to
medication. Some things are medication.
It might be a mental problem.
Because of the balance. Because of how this balance thing that we're going through.
But you're about to have a kid that's going to be 40 years old living with you, and that kid is going to always challenge you not to touch him.
Military.
And okay. The way I see it, if your child is bold enough to disrespect you, he's going to go out and disrespect someone else. And guess what? He or she's going to run into somebody in these streets that's not going to tolerate that disrespect. So they need to learn now whether or not there's consequences. I tell my sons all the time, your actions has consequences always, whether good or bad. So if they out here disrespecting your parents, they gonna go disrespect the cop. I talk to my mother that way, I can talk to you that way. Guess what? You wind up getting shot these days. So you got to instill in your kids right now that some people you can't show disrespect to because some people won't tolerate it. And that's that young generation.
No offense to the cops. We don't think all cops shoot people
No. Or
because
anybody.
sometimes people shoot people.
Exactly.
But the point is that's just an old slang. But we got to, how do we fix that? Because that parent, that question is a serious question. How do we go back and regain our respect, regain our position when you got everything around you saying you're the wrong one because of your discipline tactics? Are you willing to take the hit?
I think you have to go back to restructuring the standard in your home and be okay with not being liked. Because you may have gone through a period of trying to be liked so hard that you lacked in some of the areas of standards or establishing how things are going to go. To go back and say, listen, this is the way it is moving forward. You might be upset, you might be crying, you might be mad at me, but this is what it is, and it's not changing because it's for your good.
And from 4 to 40, kids would try you.
That's what I was just about to say. My son, he was 7. I never forget, and he ain't scared of nothing. I mean, he's TJ. Went to school, got in trouble. Teacher said, I'm gonna tell your parents. He said, tell them. I ain't scared of you or them. I did something when he got home. We ain't had no more problems because I had to put that fear in him because I would definitely probably go somewhere if I said it. You feel what I'm saying? But he was 7. So I know what my generational curse was. If I let that thing flourish, the streets gonna discipline him, or he gonna be so off the hook. I got little homeboys that's with little smiling kids, little bad kids. They doing life in prison. They killed people. They did stuff. You get what I'm saying? Because there was no discipline at home. The moms allowed them to do what they want. Oh, he cute. I hate that. He's so cute, and they want to put him in all this little stuff. That builds a mentality in his head. That makes him want to go get the money. That want to make him tougher than this other dude or whatever. You get what I'm saying? But if you don't put no fear in them, and they, like you said, they don't have no fear what's out here waiting for them, yes, I'm gonna get them.
We got less than 2 minutes. I got a question I want to bring to you. So what do a parent does when the child challenged them in the area of discipline? You know, don't you put your hand on me. I'll call the police. My daddy said you can't touch me. My mother said you better not touch me. How do you deal with that? And mostly that's in a single parent home, but how do you deal with that?
My son was in a 2-parent home, but I'll take the charge. I'm gonna have to take the charge because this is the thing. What I don't want you to do is you're not gonna be beating on me. So at some point you have to make the sacrifice
It's
if
almost like
that's
the
what it
elephant
takes.
on the chain kind of thing.
Yes, at
While
some
he's
point.
little, you let him know how dangerous how strong that chain
Exactly.
is.
And
Gotcha.
so when they get older and they say, "Oh, well, you left a mark on his face," he got more. That's
He's
just
going to
the one you
remember,
saw.
mommy actually went to jail.
It's
The mommy took the charge and went to jail to prove a point to me.
took the charge.
It
Because
might have to go
sometimes
there.
you
It
just-
depends. That's your kid.
You have
know
to
who
go
you slept
there.
with,
Yes.
so you know what's in them.
Right,
So
you
if
know
it's
what's
going to
coming.
take that, yeah.
Absolutely. And then I believe, like for the single mothers, they have to allow men to discipline their children. I don't care what you think about him. I'm just saying, if he's willing to take the responsibility, they say, oh, he do this and he do that and he with her and he this and that. That don't have nothing to do with him raising his child. Sir, come do your job
Yeah,
with your
Carla,
kid.
I agree with you.
That's a
But
good-
the problem
that's
is
a good
sometimes, we got another question, but the problem is that most parents that are separated by hurt use the tool of their children to hurt the other parent. But we got a question.
How do you deal with disciplining a blended family with a disrespectful child when the parent that's outside the home is encouraging the disrespect?
Because of time, I'm gonna answer that. You need to create rules or get an understanding before you say I do, and know who your role is, and can you live with that role before you say I do? Because if not, you can't alter it after you get in. That and that's when you have a man that don't want that woman to be with nobody but him, and she chose you. He's going to encourage the child to be on his side. You become the enemy, and that's just inside thing. So you got to create rules, and you got to say, listen, boo, I love you, but that baby have to become 21 years old before I marry you, because I can't live with a child that's going to be disrespectful for me because her father says it's okay. Our time is up. We didn't do nothing. We just went all up. We just got, but our time is up. Hope to see y'all next week. Hopefully, John talking about going to jail and just a lot going on. I was like, Lord, her but sister here, they going straight to jail. Our time is up. See you next week. Bye bye.